Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans ce nouvel épisode de l'Accounting Business Club, un épisode 100% en anglais, 100% sous-titré sur ma chaîne YouTube et sur Spotify. Pourquoi il faut que vous l'écoutiez? Parce que dans cet épisode où j'ai reçu Yann, le cofondateur de Karbon, Karbon c'est un practice software management, on a ouvert ensemble quels sont les cas d'usage d'IA dans les cabinets, comment ça va s'intégrer, comment ça s'intègre aussi chez les éditeurs, quelle est sa vision du marché à l'international, parce que Karbon est distribué aux États-Unis, en Australie, en Angleterre, donc il a vraiment une vision assez globale. En plus, il était venu nous voir en France il y a quelques années pour étudier le marché. Il va nous expliquer dans cet épisode pourquoi le marché n'était pas prêt à l'époque et qu'est-ce qui fait que pour lui la France c'est la prochaine grosse destination for sure à découvrir, parce que c'est là où ça va se développer. Et donc vraiment dans cet épisode on a parlé de plein de choses qui vont vous être utiles. C'était 100% pratique. Encore une fois, c'est disponible sur ma chaîne YouTube Alexis Lama et sur Spotify. Je suis preneur de tous vos retours et si les épisodes vous plaisent, eh ben vous savez ce qu'il vous reste à faire. Abonnez-vous, mettez 5 étoiles, ça fait toujours plaisir et ça me permet aussi d'avoir des invités comme ça à l'international. J'espère que vous allez autant profiter de cet épisode que j'ai pris de plaisir à l'enregistrer. Je vous souhaite une bonne écoute. Ciao.
Okay. Perfect. So Jan, I'm really happy to having you on the show today. I didn't tell you what is the project, what is the subject, and I just sent you a message on LinkedIn because of two reasons. First of all, I'm reading, I didn't finish yet, your book you write with Jason, which name is Scale on Purpose. And I buy it on my Kindle and I read it right now, right before to go to sleep. And it's amazing how many things you put in it. And I really recommend the book to all French accountants who want to scale their business, because you share a lot of tips, and maybe we will discuss of it during the show today. So this was the first step to contact you on LinkedIn because I told you right before we launched Play, I tried to reach out 8 years ago to import carbon in France. And then the second thing is because you just published a new study about the state of AI in the accounting industry. And I read the study and I watch your webinar, and it's fully of value for every one of us to understand, okay, how it was in 2025, how is it in how it will be in 2026. Yeah. And obviously, because in Karbon, you are using AI every day, I really want to understand how do you use AI and what you see, what opportunity you see in AI in the industry. Is it okay for you?
Yeah, it sounds great. Thanks for having me on, and appreciate you taking the time and reading the book and watching the webinars. Thanks, man.
But I love. Honestly, for me, since the beginning, since 8 years, I follow Karbon. Your marketing is a masterpiece. Your content, even your newsletter, are really good every time, every week. I'm reading it, and it's a lot of pleasure, and I'm learning a lot of things. So thanks to your team, and thanks to you.
Oh, thank you. The team will really appreciate that, but most of that content and what we talk about is from all of you guys that do all the hard work out in the accounting profession. So we're just reporting back what all the great firms out there are doing.
Yeah. And so just to understand who you are, it's because you know very well the profession. And what is really interesting for me is to understand, because we are in France, and now I really want to understand what's happened abroad. So last year I had Jason Stats, I had Ron Baker, and it starts for us to understand, okay, this is how it works in the US, but you work with accountants and in vendors or in software editors since more than 30 years or more than 20 years?
Yeah, 25 years in the accounting profession, 30 years in technology. So I've been around the block a bit. So
Wow.
I guess the history for me would be, I'll go from when I came out of grad school, which then I worked at Intuit for 10 years running QuickBooks, Quicken, and the accounting channel. And then I brought Xero to the US and North America and did that for 3.5 years. And I started Karbon 12 years ago with a couple other co-founders.
Okay. So you know what you mean. You know how a practice works. And you know what? When I preparing this show, I think about something. So you see the difference between when you start. I'm pretty sure that all practice are using software on premise,
Yep.
then you help them to go on the cloud. And now I really want to understand, okay, what's happened with AI? Because it's a new, I feel like it's a new wave.
Yeah, that's a pretty big question. I think when
Yeah.
you look at the change in the transition, when we moved from the desktop system to, we were using cloud, we were using essentially transport files, and extensibility, being able to integrate to systems was really controlled on the desktop to a few applications. Then cloud accounting was a pretty major shift, but it took a long time for that shift to really adopt. I mean, we report on that, and it's kind of ticked up from 80 something percent to almost 90% globally, just in the the last few years. I've been tracking a lot with the accounting profession since 2002, because I did a lot of research at Intuit and Xero, and still do it today at Karbon. The AI shift is pretty profound. It's profound because it changes how you operate, but it also is the speed by which it's come at us. And generally we see things in 7-year cycles. This is happening in literally in a 3-year cycle. And it really puts a lot of pressure on firms. There's a lot of expectations from the clients, but it's also in terms of how you have to compete. But it's just how you're able to, maneuver and be able to do what you've done in a more effective and efficient way for higher profitability. So it's a really, really interesting time. I think we're going to spend a lot of time on this particular podcast, kind of digging into that. But it's kind of a high level. It is a pretty monumental shift.
Yeah. And how do you see this shift for the accounting industry? Because as you say, it's now in 3 years, we took this wave. And I feel like 2 years ago, we just start to play with ChatGPT and just asking question and the answer, and it was great. But right now, I'm pretty sure that you played with Cloud Cowork and everything like that. And it just sounds crazy.
I think there's a couple levels to it. There's one which was, how does it affect the technology industry? And then it's, how does it affect the accounting industry? And the technology industry, it's having a pretty profound effect. Most of us that are building the products that you use and serve, we're being, motivated, let's put it that way, to move as quickly as we can because of the systems. Like if you look at what's happened just in the last 2 weeks, so when folks are watching this, the things that Claude and Anthropic has been able to do with co-work and other things is pretty monumental. I don't people realize just how capable it is. The entire software development industry is being upended as we speak. Coders don't code; they code review. They have the system writing the code. I know we work with a couple of different vendors in the space who now 90% of the code they write is done by a machine, and that is significant. And it makes the products you can build pretty prolific and pretty different. But that's not something that's reserved just for the technology industry. It's been democratized. We see accounting firms being able to use the same tools to be able to create the custom systems that they want, and to be able to take the systems that they have and do really, really amazing things. The difference is now you can, through a very simple interface, build what you want and then construct the workflows and how you want to interoperate and look at those things. So it's a matter of how it gets adopted and how quickly it is, because the tooling is there. Now, the AI tools that are out there are more built for generic purposes. And so applying it in the vertical context of the accounting profession, that's something that the tooling has a hard time doing. And that's where your vertical, vendors that you use, the sort of manpower and effort that everyone here might apply and play with, that's where the magic comes in. But unlike other technology, revolutions that we've seen, this one is moving so fast because of the capital. There is so much money at Google and OpenAI and Anthropic that the capital is moving this so quickly. And there is just a rat race that they're running that then is allowing for the tooling to get that much better and that much quicker and that much more capable.
Yeah. And how do you drive it for you as software editors? How do you drive your team? And how you? I know you have implemented AI in Karbon, but how do you manage it?
So I actually started using some AI tooling that was available through Google back in 2021, 2022. So a long time ago. We ran a bunch of different prototypes and things that we could see what it was doing. And the first ones we never released, but they have been released in more modern capable tooling. We spent well over 2 years refactoring all the data that goes in and out of the product because the architecture has to change with what you had. So we started that quite a long time ago. And then in 2022, 2023, we started building, we run off Microsoft. So we did a lot of our stuff with Azure and OpenAI to build the security, the privacy, but then also the first elements. Karbon's pretty fortunate. Our practice management product that we built was a communications product day one and a workflow product day two.
Okay.
And in the early use cases of AI, it was a lot of conversational AI. How do you write an email? How do you change the tone? How do you refactor what you're going to send to somebody? And so we were able to use those use cases pretty quickly. That's how we got different awards and went to market first. But then it got more exciting where we've been able to do things like suggesting what it should be doing. Like what should you enter? The idea is that you should only have to confirm. You shouldn't actually have to, use a drop down. And now it's moved into what we're working now is a lot of orchestration. How do you create virtual team members that you can work together to do certain things to enable you to do higher level activities? So you shouldn't have to be copying and pasting in data. You shouldn't have to be flipping between multiple systems to be able to understand exactly what the context would be. And that's the stuff that's coming out this year. You'll hear a lot of conversation around agentic, and so that's kind of the buzzword. But what agentic really means is taking a task and be able to execute it. And so that way, it's not just being able to write an email, but it's to be able to do a sequence of things in order to achieve, whatever the goal was going to be. And that works across many systems, that works across many different team members. And that's the stuff that we're in right now.
And we deep dive directly in the subject, but we didn't explain what is Karbon. And it's really important for me because in France, you told me that you came in France and you see just to see a market, and I really want to understand what's your view on the market. But what is Karbon, and obviously what is really important to have this kind of tool in the practice?
Yeah, so Karbon's a practice management product, and that term's pretty broad, but it brings all of your communications, all of your work, all the things about how you perform things for your clients into one place, so that you can ultimately know the right person's doing the right thing at the right time, doing the right job in the right way, so that way you are able to meet your client deliverables on task, on time, and on quality. And so it's generally used as a mechanism for how do you increase capacity, increase throughput, increase quality, while being able to serve the client at a higher level of client service. So Karbon brings in everything that's your email, how you do your processes, your workflows, and interconnects to the systems you use so that your relationships, your work, your financial information is all contextually in one place. That's what's really powerful for AI. AI wants as much context as it needs, so that way it can ultimately do what you want because it understands how you operate. And so we've been at it for 12 years. We were one of the first ones to move to be all cloud. And so we help the workforce out there that might be hybrid, might be remote, because they can work all in one place and collaborate in one particular location. While one of the difference between us and other products is we're a best of breed product. There's different products you might use for different things, and we help stitch and bring that together. So your other question was France. Yes. So my first experience in France was going to the CPA Congress several years. And phenomenal event, by the way, and phenomenal folks there. It was interesting because practice management as it currently exists as a definition within the French market was more just time and billing. It was engagements to payments. It was, there was for larger firms, you had 50 employees or more, there was an idea around capacity planning and production planning.
Mm.
but they didn't necessarily all live in the same thing.
Yeah.
And most of the work was high throughput, what we call CAS in the US, client
Mm.
accounting services. So your payroll, your bookkeeping, your accounting. And it was much less about advisory. Advisory was something I was surprised was not as prolific, which it is in the Commonwealth and US.
Mm.
And so most of it was around being able to fulfill those bookkeeping, accounting, and payroll needs. And so we ended up, Karbon is fully French enabled.
Okay.
UI, everything is in French. And it's been tuned to the French market. But we decided not to pursue moving further in the French market because in 2024, we
Okay.
felt like the market wasn't ready for it yet.
Yeah.
And so I think the market is now, especially with the regulations that have gone in,
Mm.
with what's going in effect in 2026 and 2027.
Mm.
And so we held back just for the purpose of focus, but we were
Oh,
able to work with anybody that is in the market.
okay, okay, I understand. But it's funny because when I read your book, I understand, and obviously because I'm running not an accounting firm but a service firm,
Mhm.
so for me it's I'm using Asana right now, but to program Asana for my team, I use to see what you do on Karbon
Yeah.
to understand. Okay, this is the process is using. Okay, maybe I have to understand how can I implement it in my firm. And when I'm reading your book, I understand that if I'm using a tool like Karbon, it's changed everything for my organization.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's France? It was not ready because we just do some tax and accounting, and it's not necessary to plan the team like is it with advisory?
Yeah. So it was more from a standpoint, it's another product you have to buy. And
Yeah.
practice
Mm,
management is typically not the cheapest product to buy.
mm,
And you have to understand and appreciate the need. We had the same problem when we started the company we started it and it was global from day one, but it was primarily US, Canada, Australia,
mm,
and then later came into the UK. But it takes a while for the market to understand how that tool actually operates and why it can be really effective and efficient. So on average, we bring, a firm will save about 18 and a half hours per employee using the
mm,
system. So it's quite effective and efficient, but it's a different way to work. And if you want to be able to operate the same way you did today, but put another tech tool in to then make it go a little bit faster, that's not what Karbon's built for. Karbon's built
mm,
to transform how you work. So
mm,
you have to be yearning for that capability. And when we were in the French market originally, it was more about, I just want to be able to do a better, faster way of
mm,
billing and payment, being able to invoice my client because the regulations were such that I had to do an electronic invoice and
mm,
be able to state that to the government. It wasn't about, I want to be able to collaborate with my team really effectively and be
mm,
able to get the work done at a much faster pace with much better clarity of what that needs to do. I want visibility across everything I want to do. I want to know exactly where everything stands in a given minute. I want to make sure that every deadline is being handled. And it just wasn't, the folks that we talked to either wanted the invoicing part of it or they wanted capacity planning, but they didn't want all the bits in between. And
mm.
that's just a market timing issue because we've seen that over and over again. And that's why I said that I think it's different now
Yeah.
because the complexities of running an accounting firm get harder every year. And every market just runs at a different pace. And I feel like the French market's going through that right now, that people are feeling a little bit more frustrated, a little bit more lost because the technology's changed pretty quickly. The client
Mm,
demands have changed. The Europe environment's changed. And that usually comes hard onto accountancies.
mm,
And that's why if you read the book Scale with Purpose, that's why you'll see a lot of M&A, a
mm,
lot of increasing firm sizes with, inorganic ways, which is that, practice, private equity and M&A.
mm.
But also it's why, you're trying to do more with less every single day, it feels.
Yeah.
And getting talent's really, really hard. No market in that world has they're all the same problems, just at different time horizons of when they're occurring. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Alexis?
Yeah, totally. And because we have
That's not to say the French market's not any more progressive. It's just
no, no.
just doing things a different sort of sequence, and every market runs a different sequence pattern.
Yeah, it was not the time. But if I'm coming back at the beginning of the discussion, it's about the place of AI right now in the industry and in our world. Just right before the show, I was using Claude in Excel just to create a perfect cash flow management.
Yeah.
And I just asked the Claude, okay, Claude, I'm a CEO of a digital marketing firm. I just want to help me to see my cash flow right now. I want the best cash flow management, but easy for me to use.
Yeah.
And during 16 minutes, he created me the perfect Excel. And I'm not using his Excel. I'm not the kind of guy who use Excel, but it was so good that for me right now, and that's why I think practice management is really important, because it's what it's the kind of new organization. Of course, you will not win sometimes or spend less time on your work, but you will create a new relation with your client. It's not just a spend; it's just the relationship. And with AI, you need to keep this relationship in your accounting industry, in your accounting practice.
Yeah, the biggest thing that AI is going to shift is the fact that the client relationship becomes all that more important.
Mm.
The work underneath it may get more automated and more systemized. And the tooling that just like you mentioned, Alexis, being able to create the cash flow report or a profit and loss, through an Excel, just pointing the data that you have, is pretty amazing to watch you do it. But the thing you can't replace is the conversations that you're going to have with somebody. And the more that things get digitized, the more that relationship matters. Where that becomes more useful, we did a lot of survey on that AI report was, does the client relationship become more important or less, or we get more fractured with the evolution of AI? And what we saw over the 3 years that we've been doing this report, with the data that we've assembled, the accounting professionals all agree on a majority standpoint that it ultimately helps the relationship. And that's because it helps bring together everything that's said and done and what the expectations are, and it helps the person who's serving them to have a better understanding when they go to meet and have better things at their fingertips, to be able to answer the questions, be able to get what's done, be more attentive. And that's where the power of it really is. It takes your junior team members and makes them seniors. Your seniors can become client facing. But that's a bit of a journey of the changing of how people's roles need to happen. There's a fear that AI is replacing jobs. And I think it's and you'll see it in the AI report. It's something that we see in the accounting profession as well. If you're the person who's the bookkeeper doing the job, that's the folks that are getting the most nervous. And the problem there is or the situation is, if we were in another industry, yes, I think we might be, there's legitimate concerns of job displacement. But in the accounting profession, we are fortunate in the fact that we just don't have enough talent. It's been a talent shortfall since I've been measuring it for over 20 years. And what that means is, the firms can take on either more clients, or they can do more services, or they can have better work-life balance. That's up to the firm owner. But the folks that are doing the work get more freedom in how they work and be able to do things at a higher power than they have had before. So it's not about job displacement, it's about job redefinement and how to ultimately allow for folks to do things they enjoy more versus the sort of mundane aspects that you have to do every day.
And for you, about that, what are the 3 things I have to do in my practice tomorrow?
The first thing in terms of the AI subject itself is you have to do what you just did, Alexis. Pick a tool.
Yeah. Not for me, but for the
Oh,
audience.
no, for them, I'm saying for what.
Yeah. For me, I'm an acro. I think Claude is part of my family right now.
Right, but it could be Claude, it could be Gemini, it could be Copilot, OpenAI. It doesn't matter. Pick a tool. They're all leapfrogging one another, and they all have a little bit different purpose and focus, but it doesn't matter. But for the firm owners, just pick something and start playing with it. And with that playing of it, allow for your team to have the freedom to also play. So the best way, if you want change to happen, spend the money. Spend the money or spend the time, and do that for yourself, but also give your team the freedom to do that. Use AI to write an AI policy.
Yeah.
It's good at writing that, right?
Yeah.
So get the tools, get a policy in place, understand, and create the guardrails for the team, and give the space or the time. I would probably invest in AI training. There's a lot
Yeah.
of free options, but you can get a paid option too. And that allows for folks to be able to start understanding that. I think the second is we saw in the AI report, there's a lack of communication in the firm about it. The firm owners and the people who are excited about AI believe that they're excited about it about 85%. The folks, when you ask them what their peers are, how they might think about it, they believe only 25% are actually excited about it. But it turns out they're actually excited too. So it means there's not a conversation happening in the firm. So what we did is every leader in the company uses AI, and we essentially mandate it, but we all lean in, and then we create. We have a channel in Slack. We do in our team meetings. We incentivize it by sharing the knowledge, awarding people that try. You don't have to be successful, and we all have an open dialogue on exactly what we're doing, how we're doing it, and sharing the recipes that worked and failed. That's the next thing you want to do is you want to be able to have that there. And then the third one is just be curious. I think Alexis, as you've seen, it changes so quickly. But there's a dialogue that's happening in the accounting profession across LinkedIn and other channels. And so you want to follow those who are in the know and follow who they follow and see what they're doing. And that gives you don't have to be the inventor, but you want to be inspired and curious. And that's where, again, that dialogue is happening all around us right now.
Yeah. That's exactly why I really want to be back on track with the episode in English, because I feel like in the US, you don't have all the barrier we have here, because here we have the AI Act and the GDPR and all that stuff.
Yep.
But in the US, I feel like you are more, you feel more free about how you use data and how you can use generative AI.
Yes and no. I think
Okay.
the UK and GPDR is
Yeah.
leading the entire globe. And that actually, interestingly enough, the security and privacy rules that are being set within UK and Europe are defining what they will be across the globe.
Yeah.
And so, I think that everyone there is in the lead, and those
Yeah.
restrictions and way of operating are now starting to filter across. So, for Karbon, just so you know, I have to have servers in the EU, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in all these countries, because the data privacy and sovereignty is a real thing and it's necessary. And that is one thing to be very, very careful of with AI is where is your data going and where is it moved to? Because every company that's running on AI wants your data. They need your data. That data becomes important to be able to do more powerful things. And you need to be very careful where that data goes. So when you pick who you're going to be using for your AI or your AI tooling or your practice management or your various different tools you use in your accounting firm, ask the hard questions on where that data is and how it's being used. And is it training models? Are those models private or public? Because those are the hard questions. And you will find, we take that very, very seriously. But a lot of the new upstarts don't. And that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Because we
And for,
all cover very sensitive information in the accounting profession.
yeah. And that's why when I'm using, for example, Cloud for Excel, I just think, okay, all the data I will put in it, maybe even if I'm in a pro or company, can I really trust Entropy? Can I really trust OpenAI for you?
So I've watched a lot of, so two things. One, as a backstory, my wife's worked at Google for 21 years. She just retired.
Okay.
And so I'm very familiar with how Google operates. And if you've ever taken a Waymo taxi, which is, a subset of Google, there's a reason why those things didn't go out for the many years that it's been in operation, because they're very sensitive and very careful in terms of making sure they do right for people. And so
Mm,
from a Google standpoint, that security and privacy is baked into the culture of the company and what they do.
mm,
Anthropic's mission is about making sure they're doing right for humanity on that one. So it's an interesting one. They're very forthright on that, and they're very um, they're very inclusive of how
mm,
they it needs to be regulated and managed and so forth.
mm,
And when you talk about OpenAI, it's got the connectedness to Microsoft.
mm,
And there was a time early on where it felt like it was going a little bit down to the money's more important than
mm,
everything else.
mm,
But it had to change course a couple years ago, and follow in suit with Gemini and Anthropic. So
mm.
if I had to pick the order of where the Geminis and the Anthropic would be higher, but OpenAI has a lot to lose by not doing the right thing. If it takes one big incident
Yeah,
that they're in trouble, and all that money it's spent. So
yeah,
I think when you talk about the large models that are being built, there's
mm,
safety in that. As long as when you get the tooling, you move into a private mode and
mm,
you don't go into the public general mode. It's just toggle preference that you have. And I would pay for the subscription. I
yeah.
wouldn't go on the free ones
No,
because
of
you get the
course.
control with the paid. So
Mm,
you get what you pay for. So in
yeah,
those ones, I think you're fine. But when you
yeah,
start to go into, oh, I'm going to dabble with this brand new tool that says it's going to do a magic thing,
yeah,
I would be more careful if I'm putting in anything that's personally
yeah,
identifiable information.
yeah. Really interesting. Um, Now I really want to understand. You talk about it in the study, but what are the best use case for you with AI in the accounting industry?
Yeah. So we we were measuring for each year of that kind of what the adoption rates were, and right off the gate, obviously conversational activities were the first one. Am I using it
Mm,
for email? I'm using it for communication. That's where everybody starts from an AI layer because it's
mm,
the simplest one, and it's also it's very pedantic and mundane. And oh yeah, I just write a couple bullets, write me an email, use
mm,
my prior emails as an example, and voila, I've just saved myself a ton of time.
mm,
Made sense. The second one was interesting, was on workflows, which it was interesting when we saw that come up because you didn't have something like
mm,
Claude Co-work, and those types of things. It was, how are you using it to be able to manage within the system? And it was really within the systems themselves. I'm trying to use a product, it has AI, and it's making that work go quicker. That was really what that element was about. Or I might want to stitch together a couple of tasks, and I'm using it like I would have used Zapier back in the years ago, to
yeah,
be able to do this, do that, move it here, that type of stuff. That was the number two case. That's now morphed into what we call the agentic workflows, which is going to be literally supercharged, as you'll see this year. Um, then it was meeting transcription came up, and that's a very interesting area. I'm really excited about that space, not because of meeting transcripts. I think it's, everyone will get this. You can go ahead and take the podcast, send it into an AI, and it'll summarize, the 5, 7 things that were important in here. Turns
mm.
out, Alexis is an amazing human being. I wrote a book. It'll come out that way. But what it can do is more of what I think pre and post the transcript.
Yeah,
So when you think about having a meeting, what did you do to prepare for that meeting? What did you do after the meeting was over? It's the actioning before and after that makes that super and powerful. And that's the next foray that those tools are going on. Because now I understand, everything we've done, even in the meetings that we're at, and then how to prepare and how to do it post.
yeah,
There's a lot of motion into the financial analysis. So that one started to move about a year ago, and it's now moved quite quickly. But when we do things like advisory, once you have your month end close done, or your period close, you can have the system automatically write the initial pass of the advisory report. It's
mm,
phenomenal. And you can actually tailor it to a plumber versus a tech company.
yeah,
And it goes in a language that they understand. It's phenomenal.
yeah,
And so that's a use case that's going to come pretty quickly. And that's really got the technology players in that space really scrambling to what to do,
mm,
because AI is just super powerful and being able to do that type of work.
mm.
So those are sort of some of the use cases that we're seeing. the next layer, which is what I would call business processes and workflow, that's the agentic stuff that's happening between systems that vendors like me and others are working on collectively together
Yeah, directly in the software.
in the software and between the softwares.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and being able to orchestrate so that the human stays in the loop and the systems go between themselves and work together as a collective. A lot of payroll is done, for instance, in France, right? And so it's generally in older systems, maybe. And so I just watched my co-founder, who was at my house, who retired. He's now started another company. He lives in the UK.
Okay.
Older systems, he can have agents running 600 payrolls all simultaneously, so that they can ultimately go to the old system, do all the pre-work, and then be able to spit out everything ready for the pay run to be run after it's been reviewed, and all done at scale. It's pretty incredible. And so again, it depends where you've been having to move between systems and click a lot of buttons and move data. All that can be systemized, which is pretty impressive.
And after, I really want to understand, how do you use AI? You, as a, what are your use case for you?
I do a lot of strategy for the company.
Yeah.
And I go into a lot of I'm in a lot of meetings. So I run a couple of different tools. I run one that monitors like all of my meetings, whether it be on something like this or whatnot, and it's recording in the background. And it's summarizing everything, so I have that information. And then when I go to meet with somebody, I will have it look at the Rolodex and tell me, what was the last things we discussed, what was the thing that we are supposed to discuss this time, what are things to understand, and then I'll cross-reference it with other things. I have to do things around our ecosystem, and so I'll go and have information that's gone on LinkedIn, other things, to give me digest of what's going on. We use it for building, so I have to create a whole new website, and so we have all the assets of what we've written and whatnot, and so it's actually built the web pages with the content, and that's ready to go, all pre-designed, so that the web dev team can build. That's another example. We took the book. So again, we wrote the book, Jason and I. And I think when you go and you put things in market, and you're going to go do things on LinkedIn, it should be your voice. It should be you that did it. But for instance, we used Claude to be able to take the book and then propose a 52-week order of what content that we would actually talk to, and how him and I would go back and forth. And then be able to give us the topics and the outline of that, so that way we could do the writing of it. Because we could have AI do the writing, but I just think that's not authentic.
Nice.
And I'm more of a traditionalist that way.
I just sent a message to Jason, so I will have it on the show maybe in the next few months.
Jason is as he likes to say, he's a master of Claude. He has been using Claude for a long time. He is a power user by definition. It's fun watching him work with Claude.
Ah, nice. I will ask him some question about Claude. I'm always interested to see how people are using AI and Claude, just to see, okay, do I using it right, or what could be a new idea? How can I use it better? And
yeah, I mean, again, you have to remember, it's what you asked, what I do on my day to day, right? But my team does things, and I work with my team on that. We built a whole new feature in a pretty major feature of Karbon in 3 days, using the tools that would have taken us normally probably 3 months. And so that happened last week. And again, there's enormous power there, and that's because you can do everything from writing the code to having systems actually do the testing, to actually then be able to do its own code review, to then have it presented back to the folks that are building it to do a human review before it goes further. And so to go from a prototype to a production system feature can be very, very quick. And so that's kind of a new area that we do on technology.
It's a kind of response. Last week, I just heard about the SaaS-pocalypse. I don't know if it's the right word, but a lot of SaaS have market crash. Market
Yeah.
crash, it's a big name, but everyone right now are saying, okay, you can code and you can create any app on your desk, but what you say right now is when you are, even if you are a SaaS, you can accelerate your development and
Yes.
you put all the security in it.
Yeah. And that went to my earlier point at the start. The SaaS crash it definitely, is going to continue to have a lot of volatility probably through the first half of this year, because it's really a changing of how things are done. And either you're on the bandwagon or you're not. You either have moved or you're not. And that's kind of shuffling that out. For more what I would call horizontal or generic applications in market, they're more susceptible to displacement. Especially if you, what we call point solutions, you're just doing a simple job, like you're doing one basic thing. Those things could get upended pretty quickly. When you're talking about vertical oriented products, things that are really defined for the accounting industry, it requires knowledge. And that's where I think, again, folks here that are listening, that's where there's a bit of protection. There's one thing to know how to take an Excel sheet and be able to create your profit and loss from the financials you pointed to. It's another thing to interpret what that actually means. And it can interpret it, but business A does not necessarily mean it's business B or business C. There's a lot of nuance. And so in time, yes, maybe that could occur. But that's where the knowledge of everybody here and the knowledge that goes into these vertically oriented products is more durable. And that's where, again, if you are leading the charge on AI and powering it for your purposes to do things right for the accounting profession, for your clients and so forth, you will stay ahead because the knowledge you have is something that cannot be replaced by AI. It can be augmented and supported. So, I can't look out 5 to 10 years because it feels like 3 months is pretty.
It was my next. My next question.
I think this year we talked about stabilization, and in the we talked about it in the AI particular report. If I go back into how we defined it, it was really around things were expanding, but then it was ultimately getting to more democratized and understood. This year, I think it's a lot of settling in, and I think from the profession, we're going to see some pretty big shifts and some really cool movements forward in 2027. But 2026 will be a lot of a bit more of the thrashing, experimentation, seeing different areas change, seeing different vendors come out with some unique pieces. But 2027 will be a very interesting year. I think if you look at where 2020, like 2030, I don't know. But I do think that the organizations will have some shifts in them. When we wrote the book, Scaling with Purpose, Jason and I, we really talked about the AI side of this. Sorry, the human side, not the AI side. The dynamics of people and humans will stay consistent. It's hard to manage more than 8 people, for instance. And so there's team dynamics that this talks about a lot. That regardless of whether or not you're an AI forward firm or you're a traditional firm, still always playing. But how AI changes how the jobs are being completed, that's something that's interesting, and it will fit within the dynamic of teams themselves. I do think if you move out 3 to 5 years, there will be a whole new set of entrepreneurs that will come in that will try to create teams of 6 to 12 people that will be able to rival what some of the large boutique and low mid-sized firms are able to accomplish, because they're just that much more efficient and effective. And they know that going past 12 bodies becomes a lot of management headache, and they don't want to build the scaffolding and the infrastructure. So I think there will be a shift in the market as firms are now getting much larger, but a new foray of entrepreneurs will come in and up in that norm. So we'll see.
It's funny because it's exactly what I thought when I read the book. Because in the book you write that you have the business lifestyle, you can have a business lifestyle, and then you can scale your business. And then when you explain how to scale your business, you explain that you when you have 1 to 8 people, it's okay. Then 8 to 20 people, and the system of plateau. And when I read it, I thought to myself, but with AI, even when I see how AI has changed my company
Yeah.
since 2 years ago, because at the beginning we are at Visory and marketing agency.
Yeah.
So when ChatGPT was launched, everyone told me, "Okay, your job is dead. Go back." And then I was like, "Oh, damn it! I love what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm good at it." So too bad. But so we take AI in the company, and we totally shift the organization. And when I read the book, I say, okay, so if I want to scale my business, do I really need to have 20, then 20? I have to see, 50 people, and I have to put all the organization you mentioned in the book. And then I'm really happy what you say right now, because I feel like with AI, if you are taking right and you create this good process, maybe you can have less people and do more and deliver more value to your client.
Yeah. And that's where you can bring in a specialist for a certain area of the business,
Mm,
and they can then use the AI tools to be able to make that one person act like a department,
mm,
which is insane.
yeah.
You can bring in, I think in the development area, um, we see that, engineering teams will change dramatically.
Mm,
They'll be essentially an engineering team can just be a product manager with really not much coding background or experience whatsoever.
mm,
So a team can become a person.
mm,
And so that's the transformation that I think we'll see. And I think, for instance, you, Alexis, you're in the creative agency, digital marketing. You're seeing it faster
mm,
than what's happening in the accounting profession, because there's a lot more pressure there. There's a
mm,
lot more tools that have come at you. Um, but that's the real hidden gem there, which is where I might have had 4 people in a larger firm doing payroll administration. I
mm,
just need 1.
yeah.
Um, and so the question is how do you do that? Well, again, we've had the situation where the 4 probably were so overstretched and so overworked, and they weren't able to do the job the way they wanted to do it. And so, um, again, it's not that they're going to be reduction, but it's going to be augmentation of those roles, where
Mm,
they'll be able to do a broader remit, they'll do it at a higher quality, they'll be able to have better custom client service, and that's going to ultimately drive a change maybe in the margins
mm,
and the profitability. It may take higher volume because there's an enormous unmet client demand. And again, that's where the accounting profession is a little bit lucky in the fact that the supply and demand curves aren't totally aligned, and the labor that we have in a macroeconomic sense
mm,
is not available for what we need to do. So it's going to be a leveling of those things to make. I think, in my opinion, small businesses more capable, because the small businesses get the benefit of a great accountant. If they don't, then they ultimately struggle. And so I
mm,
think it's gonna have a pretty big ripple effect to create better businesses.
mm. What are the main? Now I really want to understand about your vision of the world, because I'm pretty sure that you work with accounting firm in the US, in the UK. You see what's happening in Australia.
Yeah.
What are the main country ahead about using AI and digitalization, and what are the main difference between all the country you can see?
We were measuring progressiveness in countries
Mm,
previously, and it's interesting because I think AI a little bit levels the playing field, because each particular country has really forward firms, and those are the ones that are really driving change. Traditionally, when I measured, we used the practice excellence report, and so that's where
mm,
I was able to see kind of
yeah.
how firms operate between regions. It was funny because usually the Aussies would always say they're the most progressive,
Mm,
and it's because the complexity of the banking industry, of how that works, the fintech side of things, entrepreneurship both in New Zealand and Australia were higher, and they generally had smaller, more nimble firms,
mm,
and it was always a bit more on the progressive end. Um, you then had the US and Canada kind of flip-flopping, and Canada generally being a little bit more progressive because they had to deal with cross-border problems more so, where the US
Okay.
was more insular. And then the UK was generally a little bit more lagging. But
Okay.
recently, because of MTD and other factors in the UK, it's now gone back and forth with the US and Canada in its progressiveness. I didn't get enough data to really measure Europe as a whole, the EU.
Mm.
Um, but the French market is a large accountancy market.
Mm.
The Italian one is also large, but the French one's more regulated and
Mm.
much more, it has been around and again much more modernized, I think, than Italians. So,
Mm.
you know, it's the Aussies would be more progressive. The problem, I think, is that the US, there's so much capital and
Mm.
so much movement that's happened in the last 2 years because of AI and the closeness for proximity. I mean, you've got folks in Pennsylvania in the United States who are now, you have farmers who are denying data center builds going in their backyard because they don't want to pay the power that's necessary and go have their bills accelerate. You got New Jersey, who's got the highest power bill rates in the country, and people are wondering why. It's because they've got AI data centers all sitting in their backyard. These are hitting common people in real ways, and that
Mm.
changes the dialogue and the attentiveness to the technology. So
Mm.
that's why, again, it's a little bit interesting in terms of how this has impacted the day to day for folks in the States. And I think
Mm.
that's why the States has had a little bit more of a head start and a little bit more movement there. But the UK has quite a lot of really strong, progressive technical
Mm.
folks in the vendor space, but also accountancies. There are some people there and some firms doing some really amazing stuff. So I think it's more democratized. It's not regional specific. It's
Mm.
looking at the progressive side of the accountancy market.
Okay, so I
That's a
have
long-winded
to.
answer to say it's
Yeah.
it's it's not that easy.
Yeah, but it's interesting because we can see that all the industry have facing the same issue or the same move right now.
Yeah.
And 5 years ago, I was or 4 years ago, I was at Accountex in London.
Mhm.
And I feel like, okay, they really need to change their business. They have already changed their business model. And because they were much digitalized than us, and 3 or 4 years later, I feel like we are all in the same moment that, okay, we have the big wave of AI. No one's really know how to use it and what will be the change for us, but we have to take it and change our business right now.
I think that's a really good example. So I've gone to Accountex many years.
Mm.
Accountex is in London is one places you can see almost every vendor on the planet and get a
Yeah.
sense of where things are at.
Yeah.
So for those listening, go to Accountex London and then go to the CPA Congress, and you'll see a difference between the two.
Okay.
And I think this year it'll be pretty stark. And that to me is a pretty good example of understanding kind of how quickly things are changing. Because I think the CPA Congress, it's usually in September. So
The DCPA or the CPA?
what's up?
Which one? Which one? The DCPA or the in the US? You
No,
talk?
I'm saying in France.
Ah, in
This,
France. Okay, 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 okay.
I
The
think that
Congrès des experts comptables. Yes, it's in September.
yeah. So it's in September this year, which I think is because it's kind of in the middle of the year, and
Yeah,
there's going to be quite a lot of movement in AI going around that time, but a little bit later. And
yeah.
the Caltex is usually in
In
April.
May. Yeah,
And so I think if you were to look at where Caltex is this year and then go to CPA Congress this year, you'll see them being very different.
yeah,
But if you go next year, I think you'll see the CPA Congress would have changed significantly in terms of the vendors that are there and what they're talking about. And so
yeah,
I think it is a pretty quintessential year and a year and a half for the
yeah.
French market overall.
Oh, nice. Okay. Why
Yeah.
why do you think that? Because what you say at the beginning, because with the change of facture électronique,
With the
e-invoicing, etc., etc.
Yeah, you have the regulation shifts. You
Yeah,
have firms who are hungry to get ahead. You
yeah,
have those who are leaning into AI, trying to understand how it's happening.
Mm.
Where I think the UK market's moved quicker on that.
Mm.
But the fact is, there's such close proximity between the two
Yeah.
that the accounting industry is very interesting in that there's a small number of leaders and a lot of what I would call laggards. And when the leaders sprint ahead, everyone's quick to jump in to figure out what they did and how they did it. And that is happening literally at this moment. And I think it's just because of the timing of those conferences and when they actually happen.
Yeah.
That's why I think you'll see a stark difference between 2026 and 2027 between them. So it'd be a very interesting exercise, Alexis, to go to those particular two events this year and next year. And I guarantee you'll see what I'm talking about.
Of course, I'll be there. Of course, but you know what? I think I can be in account text this year because I have another trip. But maybe I will go to the digital accountancy show.
Yeah, the DAS.
Yeah, the DAS. I was there last year, and I see that they changed the date. It will be in September or October this year.
Yeah.
And because I can't be in account text, I will be in DAS. Okay. Will you be so? With all what you just say to me, you will be in Paris in September.
I don't know what my trips are going to be this year yet. I traveled almost continuously for 6 months last year. And so I don't travel until mid-May this year because I actually, I coach a high school sports team.
Oh, nice.
I have to be there every day. So that's what I do this time of year. So I try to give back.
Okay. But in September, it will be free. You will be free.
I'll be free, yes. I coach another team there, but I don't head coach that one. So I just assist.
Nice. So maybe I'll see you in Paris in September for the CPA Congress.
Yeah, you might.
It will be. I'm pretty sure that it will be a big one because of e-invoicing and because in France we have private equity who are coming since 2 years very fast right now. So everything is changing and it's really interesting to see what's happened. So if it's not in.
It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time in the accounting profession. And I think it goes back to you can lean in and be part of the excitement and kind of see how it goes, or you can lean out. And I would urge everyone to lean in because this is where it's one of the few moments in time where you can ultimately carve a completely different path or an accelerated path for your firm. Again, if you just stay curious.
Yeah, just stay curious. Love it. Just one more question because I see it's time. If you have one resource, of course, I will put the book in the link of the description. But what is the main resource? Do you still have the podcast of Karbon?
It's changed. But my co-founder Stuart used to run it. And then he retired. But they're bringing back. We have the newsletters, so you can go to carbonhq.com. And then go to /resources.
Yeah.
And that's where the newsletter, you can sign up for it.
I think I put an article of Karbon each month in my newsletter.
If you want to check out the details on the book, we have the website Scale with Purpose.
Yeah.
So you can go to scalewithpurpose.info and you'll get it. And again, you can just type the name and it'll come up. So on Amazon or whatever. So yeah.
And it works even in France with Kindle. It's perfect. You can read it and it's a lot of content. Honestly, it took time for me to read it because when each page I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, just think about it. How you can implement it. Okay. So really a really great book, and I'm really happy to discuss about it with Jason soon in the podcast. Jan, do you want to add something, or when can we get in contact with you?
Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, my information's on the web. You can get everything you want, my cell phone and whatnot. But you can just email me at ian@carbonhq.com. Carbon spelled with a K. And I'm happy to, or I'm on LinkedIn. So you can
of course, I will put your LinkedIn in the description.
I'm just like you. So again, if you send me a note, I'll send you a note back. I'm happy to share what I've learned. So I've been fortunate to be an interesting seat in the bus in the accounting profession. So my job is to share whatever I learned so that you guys can help businesses like mine be more successful. So thank you to everybody listening about what you do for small businesses, because you guys are the heroes. And you help make great businesses like what we have.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree with what you say. Right now, accountants and CPA are really helpful for all the entrepreneurs, and we need them empowered. Really hard for me to say it, with AI, with technology to be more in contact to their clients.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jan. I keep you just after to take a picture because I love souvenir. And of course, if you come in France, we are really happy. We will be really happy to receive you in the show in our office in Paris. Jan, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate it.